William Blake Everett was raised in the South during the 1920s, where he and his family rented a small plot of land, unfortunately from a greedy racist landowner, in return for a portion of the Everett's crop to be given to the unfair landowner at the end of each year. So when that didn't work out after Will punched him in the mouth, they quickly ran away to Detroit, the hub of the nation's defense, where Will's father, Jake, managed to get a job working tirelessly at a auto factory so he could pay for Will's schooling, while Will trained at night for the 1936 Berlin Olympics. Unfortunately, when the US economy crashed in 1929, his father, who was the last to be hired because he was black, cried when he was the first to be fired because he was black, which broke Will's heart, who now had to watch his mother, Lula Mae, be employed to clean the rooms and furniture inside a building. So Will wanted to drop out of school, but his parents wouldn't let him, knowing one day he would make them proud, which he did, when he, along with Jesse Owens, won gold medals at the Berlin Olympics, despite the criticism that they couldn't because they were black. Unsurprisingly, his gold medals didn't mean nothing back home in America, as he was still treated like a second-class citizen. And what's worse, his rat-infested home mysteriously caught on fire. Thereafter, Will got a job sweeping up for a scientist from Metropolis named Dr. Terry Curtis, who paid him in advance, before mysteriously disappearing a few weeks later, when suddenly a couple of hired goons with guns showed up, looking to confiscate the scientist's atom energy device. Shockingly, Will let his pride get the best of him by attacking the goons with a bucket of water instead of complying after they called him the racial slur boy. Moreover, he was knocked unconscious with the butt of a gun by an unseen third goon and brought underground within Mount St. Helen to a facility ran by a multi-being known as the Ultra-Humanite, whose vile brain was in the body of a woman named Dolores Winters, and recognized Will from television and decided not to end his existence but instead dress him up in attire before transforming him into one of her superpowered goons by using Dr. Terry Curtis' electro generator, which then blew up with him on it after he tried to fight back against the pain. Interestingly, Will emerged from the flames made of metal after gaining the ability to transform or merge himself into a living embodiment of any material he touched, as he went on to attack his captors before the Ultra-Humanite halted the battle to offer Will a lucrative deal to aid her blackmail the US government into giving her $100 million or she'll destroy parts of the country. However, she promised to spare his hometown of Detroit if he retrieved, unbeknownst to him, an ancient and extremely powerful magical helmet at the Tower of Fate, which he accepted since he wanted to financially help his parents by any means. Furthermore, now within the tower, he encountered the wife of Dr. Fate, Enza Nelson, who in a state of panic accidentally knocked herself out trying to secure the helmet, when not long after, as Will tried to escape the tower with the helmet, Dr. Fate Kent Nelson, wearing his non-magical substitute helmet, and the Atom Albert Pratt confronted him before attacking him, which initiated a battle where Will impressively held his own against two of the All-Star Squadron's formidable members, even though he was just getting used to using his powers, as he turned himself into metallic gold and then cellulose wood before he was knocked out by the Atom, who caught him off guard. Following this, he was dropped off at the All-Star Squadron headquarters in Long Island, New York, where they would tie both his hands behind his back. However, he managed to free himself by turning into iron after being put next to an iron railing, which gave him the idea to start calling himself Amazing Man. Nevertheless, he now had to fight his way out of the facility after he was bombarded by the rest of the members of the All-Star Squadron, consisting of Batman, Robin, Dick Grayson, Green Lantern, Alan Scott, Commander Steel, Henry Haywood, Liberty Bell, Libby Lawrence, and Tarantula, John Law, who all shockingly struggled to take down Amazing Man despite their combined efforts, until Commander Steel managed to subdue him, while Liberty Bell, who sensed good in Amazing Man, uncovered the Ultra-Humanite was planning to destroy huge sections of Brooklyn, Los Angeles, and shockingly even Detroit, after swearing she wouldn't. So Amazing Man decided to join forces with the All-Star Squadron to go after the Ultra-Humanite, while rescuing the captive superheroes Superman, Robot Man, Robert Crane, and Firebrand, the Ned Raleigh. So Amazing Man, who was being monitored by Alan Scott and the Atom, encountered time-displaced Justice Society members from the future at the Tank Factory, consisting of Green Lantern Jade along with Obsidian Todd Rice, who engaged them in battle after they were tricked by the Ultra-Humanite into believing our other heroes were the enemies. Meanwhile, Amazing Man decided to stay out of it, since he had nothing to gain if he got involved, when suddenly war workers, along with the teenage vigilante group known as the Boy Legion, showed up to help our heroes battle also newly arriving henchmen of the Ultra-Humanite called Ragdoll and Monocle. Nevertheless, Amazing Man came up with the idea to leave with Ragdoll and Monocle out of Detroit when they were summoned by the Ultra-Humanite. Succeeding this, now at the Ultra-Humanite's hideout, she will introduce Amazing Man and her other henchmen, Deathbolt and the hostage Dr. Terry Curtis, who is now superpowered and called Cyclotron, to time-displaced supervillains who were really not willing to take orders from anyone. When suddenly, members of the All-Star Squadron who infiltrated the hideout attacked the evildoers in an epic battle, as Amazing Man double-crossed the Ultra-Humanite and took on Deathbolt by first turning himself into rubber to combat Deathbolt's electrokinesis powers, and then metal to finish him off. Meanwhile, a reluctant Dr. Terry Curtis was forced by the Ultra-Humanite to use his ability to alter molecule structure and change Amazing Man back to flesh, which the painful attack knocked Amazing Man out, causing him to be captured along with the other defeated heroes and be brought to a hospital in New York. The Ultra-Humanite took over in order to transfer her brain and power stone into Robot Man. Unsurprisingly, the Ultra-Humanite plan will be foiled by more arriving heroes who found Amazing Man's secret letter of her plans, which was the start of her inevitable defeat. Succeeding this, Amazing Man would be recruited into the All-Star Squadron, but wouldn't be able to attend the very first meeting of the full roster because he was taking a well-earned leave granted by the elected chairwoman, Liberty Bell, so he could decide if he was going to continue as a mystery man or not. Meanwhile, for several nights in Detroit, some white residents violently protested against the unoccupied middle-class houses of a new Negro housing project called the Sojourner Truth Homes. So on the night of February 25th, Will and his father went to look at their future home into the 7 Mile Finland district when suddenly their vehicle was attacked with bottles before being blocked and forced to stop, which caused Will to leap from the car in order to divert attention from his father, who fled in terror to seek help while getting hit with rocks and bricks, as the angry white mob next grabbed Will, who was really trying not to fight, and threw him to the ground, beating, kicking, and cursing him, when suddenly men in purple robes from the Phantom Empire appeared and tied a now unconscious Will with chains and began to hoisting him on a wooden cross before dousing gasoline on him to wake him up so he'll be fully aware of what was to follow. Nonetheless, Will, now feeling intense disgust and hatred, witnessed a cigarette lighter hurled into the gas-soaked timber around the cross he was on and set ablaze. However, luckily, Will managed to change into the texture of the iron chains and tore himself loose, causing the masked and unmasked men to scatter like a bad case of diarrhea, which Will used the opportunity to escape within the cover of darkness. So that next morning, All-Star members headed to the home of Will in the poverty-stricken neighborhood area surprisingly called Paradise Valley, nearby a bomber plant, where they met his fiancée Rachel and mother before heading out to the Sojourner Truth Project, where for nearly 2 hours an angry group of African Americans faced off against a larger gathering of Caucasian Americans less than a mile from the Sojourner Truth homes, while Will's father, who was in his red delivery van, led his people only to be knocked unconscious from a brick through his windshield before Amazing Man was revealed to be in the back of the van, before confronting the angry white mob carrying stones, bottles, makeshift clubs, and bricks, which Amazing Man used to change his very substance into, before battling them in a full-scale race riot. However, not long after, members of the All-Star Squadron showed up to separate the two groups and calm them down, when suddenly the Purple Empire's champion, called Real American, arrived to stir things back up with his flexible steel whip in hand. So Amazing Man challenged him to a duel in a test of strength and combat, which surprisingly saw Amazing Man being no match against him. So Amazing Man tried his luck by turning himself into iron after touching a manhole cover, only to once again shockingly fall short of victory against the abnormally powerful foe, when abruptly the speedster Johnny Quick intervened to stop Amazing Man from continuing to attack Real American, which got him punched in the mouth. However, Amazing Man would suddenly be knocked out by a 2-inch thick and 4-inch wide cut piece of wood before the police went on to discriminately haul him along with his father off to jail. Shockingly thereafter, Real American and a crowd of angry white men stormed the police station, falsely accusing Amazing Man of murdering a white man that never happened, in order to demand the authorities release him to them to be lynched. Following this, members of the All-Star Squadron will visit Amazing Man and his father behind bars, as Amazing Man was put in a straitjacket garment designed to restrain his arms. Surprisingly, however, it would be Robot Man to free Amazing Man from his jail cell by sticking his electronic ears on his ears, which fused to Amazing Man when he temporarily turned into metal, filtering out the voice of Real American that Robot Man discovered, hypnotizing some of the members in the crowd along with superheroes with a mind-influencing device. Nevertheless, Amazing Man defeated the Real American, who proved to be actually an android from another dimension, before exploding when Amazing Man turned into metal to cover him in order to suppress the destruction while protecting the crowd of white people from injury, who realized Amazing Man risked his life to save theirs, so they left in silence and embarrassment. Moreover, after the untimely fall of the Phantom Empire and ongoing conflicts between white and black people, Amazing Man decided to make a positive difference in the world by joining the All-Star Squadron as a symbol of his people's resilience and worth, which he would be accepted with open arms into the roster. So as time progressed, Amazing Man will find himself along with the members of his team fighting the likes of Tsunami, who draws her strength from the waters of the earth, Kung Sung, who can transmute his flesh into that of any beast, and Somo the Samurai, the ultimate warrior of Japanese ancient fighting arts, at the All-Star Squadron's base of operations known as the Perisphere, after the trio came for Starman's gravity rod. Furthermore, Amazing Man took on Somo the Samurai before turning into rubber instead of metal. Unfortunately, with the combined strength of Tsunami and Somo, they brought Amazing Man down before their leader, Prince Daka, the Emperor of Japan, arrived and confiscated Starman's gravity rod before ordering our hero's execution. Luckily, the Guardian, James Harper, saved Amazing Man's life by deflecting Somo's katana sword with his golden shield. Nonetheless, our heroes would eventually become victorious after a grueling battle that made its way to the Bronx Zoo, where Somo and Tsunami will lose respect and betray the prince for trying to commit treachery. Succeeding this, Amazing Man will aid his team battle and defeat the Monster Society of Evil in Harlem, led by the size-altering scientist Mr. Wu. And then our heroes will go on to defeat Axis America, who were a group of supervillains created by the Germans, Japanese, and Italians during World War II, followed by Reptilian Skull, who was the returned Ultra-Humanite, which Amazing Man and his now close friend Robot Man defeated with the aid of the young All-Stars. Moreover, Amazing Man will save Robot Man's life at Project M after turning into metal in order to lift 2 tons of machinery to stop an electric power source that was sabotaged with the current being deflected into Robot Man, which Amazing Man had to stop by next turning into an electric magnet. Thereafter, Amazing Man discovered his power somehow was exchanged for the ability of magnetic powers instead, which he would use to later take down 2 Nazi saboteurs, as he was not able to fly, levitate, and glide using magnetic manipulation. So as time progressed, President J. Edgar Hoover revealed Amazing Man's true identity to the public, which consequently caused him and his family to receive death threats constantly, to the point his nephew, a civil rights worker, and 2 of his friends' bodies were found in the trunk of their car after Amazing Man pulled it out of a Mississippi swamp. So Amazing Man went on to lead marches against segregation across the country, subduing race riots in Detroit while hunting down and capturing the killer of Martin Luther King. That being said, Will Everett is DC Comics' Amazing Man.